What it do, YouTube? Once again, I am your boy Tony Vogue, the eBoy, Zombie Slayer, and we're gonna react to a video by Shrouded Hand on the world's strangest mental disorders. Now, Shrouded Hand is one of those YouTubers that I greatly admire, and we generally almost always have a great video. We go with Shrouded Hand. Now, please subscribe to the originals channel, subscribe to my channel. Drop me a like, drop me a comment, drop me a thumbs up. It's v0gu3.gq for all my socials, alright? Including my OnlyFans, v0gu3. Play Call of Duty with me. Check out the Discord servers I chill at, discord.gg/Black Velvet Lounge. I believe that's the one. Otherwise, discord.me/Black Velvet Lounge. That'll work for sure. Let's check this out.
I've done quite a few videos about mental disorders, mostly relating to art. I've always been fascinated with what the human mind can do, and I think looking at these mental imbalances can teach us a lot about how our brain constructs reality. So I thought I would talk about some of the most unusual conditions out there. These are the world's strangest mental disorders. The Jumping Frenchman of Maine.
Ooh.
There are a lot of disorders that are very situational, usually happening to people of a certain nationality or in a certain place at a certain time.
Right.
One of the strangest cases of these situational disorders was described by the American neurologist George Miller Beard in 1878 and became known as the Jumping Frenchman syndrome. Strangely enough, it only seemed to affect a very small community of French-Canadian lumberjacks in the Moosehead Lake area of Maine.
Fucking Moosehead.
The most obvious symptom was an exaggerated startle response. Those with Jumping Frenchman syndrome would overreact to any mild surprise. A sudden noise or a tap on the shoulder would be enough to cause them to jump up into the air and utter a loud shriek. Even stranger still, for a brief time after their shock, they seemed strangely suggestible, as if in a hypnotic state.
That's weird.
They would automatically repeat back any words that were spoken nearby, and unthinkingly carry out any instructions that they were given. In one case, a man was startled and then told to hit his own wife, which he did without a second thought. Once locals got wind of this strange disorder, they would deliberately surprise the Frenchmen to see their reaction. This had the effect of worsening the symptoms. The more they were startled, the stronger the reaction became. Quite what caused this disorder, whether it was culturally specific, environmental or neurological, is unknown. The physician Gilles de la Tourette wrote about the disorder in 1884, and these studies led to his discovery of Tourette syndrome a year later. This suggests that the two conditions are very similar. Jumping Frenchman syndrome is extremely rare, but it does crop up in other parts of the world under different names. For example, in Malaysia and Indonesia, they have a condition called latar, characterized by extreme startle response, followed by uncontrollable laughing, screaming or dancing, and the mimicking of the actions of people around them. Koro. One of the strangest culturally specific disorders is called Koro, also known as shrinking penis syndrome.
Damn.
Koro is the delusion that one's penis is shrinking or retracting into the body, and it occurs within cultures that believe that penile retraction is caused by an evil spiritual force. For example, in traditional Chinese medicine, Koro is believed to be a symptom of an imbalance in a person's yin-yang system. In Africa, Koro is believed to be caused by witchcraft. The belief that one's genitals are shrinking can cause a person severe anxiety. The anxiety causes a vasoconstriction of the penis, causing it to shrink. The shrinkage is seen as evidence that the Koro is taking effect, and so the anxiety becomes even worse, and then it becomes a vicious cycle.
That's crazy.
As Judge Constanza will attest, penile shrinkage is only temporary, but men caught in a feedback loop of Koro anxiety can have the condition for years. It can be especially bad in cultures that believe that the genital shrinking can eventually lead to a painful death.
Damn.
Belief in Koro has led to some bizarre treatments, and they vary according to whatever culture it occurs in. They usually involve the application of various herbal balms, or the tying of weights and hooks to the penis to stop it from retracting into the body. In some African tribal cultures, it's believed that the only way to reverse the Koro is to find the person who cursed you with the affliction and kill them. I picked this one because it shows how the mind can affect the physical body. If you believe something strongly enough, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Capgras syndrome. Imagine waking up and finding out that your loved ones have been replaced with imposters. They look exactly like the person. They walk like them, talk like them, act like them, but deep down you just know that this person is a stranger. This is what life is like for people with Capgras syndrome. The condition is caused by damage to the right hemisphere of the brain, in the section of our mind that deals with recognition. Most often it occurs in people with Alzheimer's, but it can also be caused by traumatic injury or brain tumours. People with Capgras syndrome are convinced that those around them have been replaced with an exact body double. When asked how they know, they can't identify a particular attribute that reveals the deception, but they just have a very strong feeling deep down that this is not the person that they knew before. Most often the imposters are those closest to them, family members, spouses. The heartbreaking thing is that they can't be talked out of the delusion. The people they loved the most are gone, replaced with strangers that they have no feelings towards. In some rare cases, they can even believe that pets or even entire buildings have been replaced with forgeries. In this documentary, a man named David developed Capgras syndrome after being in a car accident. As well as believing that his family were complete strangers, he often woke up believing he was in the wrong apartment. It looked exactly like his own home, but he just knew everything in there was a forgery.
Damn.
The only way to shake him of that belief was for someone to lead him down to the entrance of the building and then back up to his apartment, at which point he would recognise it as being his own home, at least for a few hours until the delusion took hold of him again. In one strange case, a woman even believed that her own reflection was an imposter.
Jeez.
A 77-year-old woman, we'll call her Sarah, developed Alzheimer's disease, which atrophied the right hemisphere of her brain. One day her son found her, sat in front of the mirror doing sign language. She had been deaf all her life, so the sign language wasn't that unusual, but there was nobody else present for her to be talking to. When the son asked her what she was doing, she said she was talking to the other Sarah in the mirror.
Okay,
she said
that's
that the other Sarah
kid.
had went to the same school as her, although they didn't know each other back then. And other Sarah also had a son with the same name as Sarah's son. In most ways, Sarah and other Sarah were almost identical, although the other Sarah talked a bit too much and didn't know sign language as well as Sarah did.
What?
Strangely enough, she recognised anything else in the mirror as just being a normal reflection. It was only her own image that she mistook for being another person.
That's weird, bro.
I did briefly cover Capgras syndrome in my video about changelings, so if you want to hear about some of the deadly consequences of this delusion, then check out that video as well. Fregoli syndrome. The other side of Capgras syndrome is Fregoli syndrome. Instead of believing that people around you have been replaced with doubles, Fragoli sufferers believe that multiple people are in fact the same one person in disguise. The name comes from Leopoldo Fragoli, an Italian stage actor famous for his quick change costume routines. Similar to Capgras delusion, the condition is sometimes caused by an atrophy or damage to the area of the brain associated
Brain damage
with facial
is weird,
recognition.
man. Have
and
you heard of
memory
Wernicke
association,
syndrome?
But it's most
Hey,
often
that's
seen
another
in people
weirdo.
with paranoid schizophrenia.
Hey,
In
you
one
get
strange
bonked on the
case
head,
in
you get
2010,
weird, bruh.
A man was admitted to a psychiatric clinic showing signs of schizophrenia.
I love the fucking
For the
graphics.
past few months he had been
Cryptic.
pursuing an online relationship with a woman he'd met on Facebook, or so he thought. The delusions began when he started using a face cream, and he developed the strange notion that the cream was somehow transforming his features, making him have the perfect face to attract women. He
Okay.
then contacted a woman on
Perfect,
Facebook and expressed his wish to enter into an intimate relationship with her, but she declined and then broke contact with him. After that, he started to contact other women, but in his mind it was always that same first woman he'd spoken to. It was his belief that she was using the same facial cream as him and using it to transform her face to look like different women. In his mind, this showed that the woman wished to enter into a relationship with him, using the disguise to hide her true feelings. Truman Syndrome. If you're familiar with the movie The Truman Show, you probably have a good idea of what this condition entails. Sufferers of Truman Syndrome believe that they're part of a giant reality show. The world around them is one big film set, and the people in their lives are actors. The things that happen to them every day are being carefully engineered by a film crew to provide interesting plot twists for the show. The name for this delusion was coined in a medical paper written by psychiatrist brothers Ian and Joe Gold. In this paper they cite 5 case studies in which a person was convinced that they were the unwilling star of a reality TV show. In one case, a man believed that cameras had been implanted into his eyeballs and the people around him were actors. He thought that the 9/11 attacks had been fabricated as a plot device, so he travelled to New York to prove that the towers were still standing. Upon being admitted to a psychiatric ward, he asked to speak to the show's director. In another case, a man actually worked as a crew member on a reality TV show, and then he began to believe that he himself was part of a TV show. He believed that his thoughts were being controlled by a film crew paid for by his family. I find this one kind of creepy because it makes me think, what did he experience working on a real reality TV show to make him develop this delusion? The interesting thing about Truman Syndrome is that it seems to be specifically linked to the film The Truman Show. In 3 of the 5 cases in the paper, the patients themselves described it as being just like the Truman Show movie. The Gold brothers even looked back through psychiatric records to see if there was any record of such a condition existing before the release of the Truman Show movie, but found none. It seems that this film has caused its own psychiatric delusion.
That's pretty gangster.
Cotard delusion. The last condition I want to look at is also known as walking corpse syndrome. People with Cotard delusion believe that they're dead or decaying or missing vital internal organs. This can lead to a profound depression and a feeling that nothing has any meaning or consequence. After all, what's the point in living when you're already dead?
That's some shit, man.
The name Cotard delusion comes from the French neurologist Jules Cotard. In 1880, a patient came to his clinic. She claimed to have no brain, no nerves, no stomach or intestines. Despite this, she believed that she was eternal and would live forever. The delusion that she didn't possess a digestive system also meant she believed she didn't need to eat, and so she simply starved herself to death. In a more recent case from Brazil, a man with a history of schizophrenic episodes was examined at a psychiatric clinic after his behaviour began to change. He was dishevelled, unshaven, and covered in filth from not showering. His thoughts were slow and confused. He told doctors that his internal organs had rotted away inside him. He was hollow and his flesh was also starting to rot away. He said that he could smell his own body decaying. When he looked in the mirror, he could see his face covered in holes and his body was deformed. Of course, all these bodily changes were delusions. When he tried to show doctors, there was nothing for them to see. In many cases, people with Cotard delusion will request to be put in a coffin and buried. Sometimes they will simply lie down and refuse to eat and move or speak. They act like a corpse because deep down they feel that they're already deceased. As with most mental conditions, diagnosing things like Cotard delusion isn't a clear-cut thing. A person might display Cotard-like symptoms among other schizophrenic delusions. These delusions may change day to day.
That's crazy.
A person might have Fragoli-like delusions one day and then Capgras symptoms the next.
Cotard, Fragoli,
On top of that, the individual symptoms of each particular syndrome will vary wildly between each patient. I think that's part of why I find these conditions so fascinating.
This was an eye-opener. I learned a lot
diagnosis
from this video.
Can be fairly cut and dry. A mental disorder
Please subscribe
seems
to
to have
Shrouded
infinite variations.
I get so much from Shrouded
It really shows how complex the human mind is and how precarious our own perception of reality is.
That was an interesting video. I'm glad to be able to bring my reaction to it. You gotta subscribe to Shrouded. You gotta subscribe to me. It's your boy Tony, eBoy zombie slayer. Till next time.